Alrighty, so welcome everybody to CBOS Build Your Foundation online meeting webinar tonight. First of all, my name is Matthew Kallio. I'm a referee here in Canada, one of our Canadian FIBA referees, and I'll be hosting this here tonight with our guest speaker, Joey Crawford, and then we'll get to the fireside chat with Nadine Crowley and Mike Thomson, who are two of our Canadian FIBA referee instructors. So just to get started here, I just want to wish and kind of send my thoughts to everybody. We're going through these tough times and a new normal, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to hop on this call. But the most important thing is our families and our communities, and the whole purpose of tonight is let's get away from the news and everything else that's kind of around us, and enjoy the evening with our peers and learn and get back to the game of basketball. Further to that too, I just wanted to reach out to those people in Nova Scotia. Our thoughts are with you through these challenging times, and we never want to see that in our Canadian community, and so we just send our thoughts to all those communities. So with that said, we're not here to listen to me talk, that's for sure. We'll get to the meat and potatoes with Joe Crawford here soon. But I just want to show you here the reach of this webinar. We're approaching 500 people tonight here, which would be $12,500 to the Canadian food banks. So thank you for all of your contributions to helping those in need. But this is a pretty diverse graph and pretty cool to see about the reach that we're going to get. But nonetheless, let's get to the fun part here. I'd like to introduce Joey Crawford, 39-year NBA referee, currently NBA Director of Referee Performance, one of them with the NBA staff. And I put this little quote here for the love of the game. So I've been fortunate in my experience with the NBA G League and the WNBA to have Joey at events at Summer League and the G League Showcase, and had him as an observer many times. And I've seen him speak in front of the referees in a group of 50 plus referees, and I've seen him one-on-one giving feedback. And that really just sums up how I think of Joey Crawford. He loves this game, everything that he's going to speak about tonight. I think if you don't hear his passion, then you're not listening, because it is really cool to see his love and dedication for the game and how contagious that is, and something that I've admired, at least through my experience with Joey. So with that said, Joey, we'll kick things off here, but just want to say thank you from all of us here to be a part of this with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm tickled that you have me, and I hope everybody's well under the circumstances and that we're all under. But I appreciate it very much, Matt. You're a good referee, and everybody that's on this, including the IVO people that are instructors, the key to this is let's get better. And that's why we're here. And any chance that I have to give back like this is it's awesome. I really, really enjoy doing it. And my problem is that you'll go over it. So like if you're on this for an hour, yeah, let's do some more. I get a little crazy where I want to just go over plays all the time, and I really like this. So, but thank you very, very much for inviting me and thinking that I would have an impact with your group. Thank you very much.
Oh, we do appreciate it, and thank you. So to kick things off here, Joey, just kind of get the ball rolling, but on the basis of our title. But one of the questions we had from one of our referees are, what are the fundamentals that you go back to every game, and do they change depending on the game?
They do change. Um, we've been doing, during the pandemic, we've been doing breakdowns. There's 5 of us that do this. Monty McCutcheon's the boss, so he doesn't. He's not a DA. He's the boss. So Mark Wunderlich, myself, Bennett Salvatore, E.F. Rush, and Bernie Fryer. So we have each have like 15 referees that we work with during the season. I mean, we work with anybody, but we really have 15. And that's what we do. We talk fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals. That's what we talk. Matt knows it. He's been to our camps. He understands it. But it does change. It does change. And I would lie if I said that it didn't change. At the end of the game, there may be something that you applied to a particular situation that you may not have done in the first quarter or the first half. Excuse me. And the fundamentals to me and to us as we teach it is the lifeblood of this. It's and if you apply them and you listen to the people that are teaching you, you're going to get better. And obviously, being on this, you want to get better. I mean, you're taking your time out of your evening to try to get better as a ref. I used to talk to myself constantly when I was reffing, and we tell our G League refs and our people that are vying for jobs to talk to themselves as they're refereeing. That to me is a fundamental. And so if you keep you in the game and you talk about your mechanics, you talk about your positioning, and you just keep applying that possession after possession after possession after possession. And what you do is you just get into these fabulous habits. And if you're getting the proper teaching, our motto is that if we can get you to the same spots all the time and you're looking at the proper players, you're going to get most of your plays right. Of course, you're going to have hiccups. I made a career of hiccups. I a lot of mistakes. And that's what the game is. It's a game of mistakes and how you get back from that mistake. You know, just because you may have screwed up a play doesn't mean that you have to take a load of crap from some player or coach. You get out of the situation, you're taught, and your teachers are telling you how to get out of that situation, but you got to get back to calling the game. You got to get back to play calling. You got to get back to that. And that's a huge fundamental because let's face it, everywhere we're at, we get pushback. That's what we do. That's what the job is. So how you deal with it and how you can come back from that and get your concentration back to your fundamentals is very key. It's huge for this. But again, it does not happen overnight. It doesn't. This is the stuff that you have to constantly work on, constantly. So the day I left the NBA, I was worrying about my fundamentals and how I was handling certain plays or how I was talking to this coach. Did I offend that player? Did I make matters worse? So you're constantly working on those types of things because remember, you have another ref out there with you. You have 2 refs out there with you. You don't want to screw it up for them because you're an egomaniac and you're trying to, you're not going to do this in my game. Well, it's not your game. It's not your game. It doesn't, when you get the assignment, it doesn't say your game. So there's multiple fundamentals that you're applying on a nightly basis. And you have to keep getting better and better and better at it.
For sure. And I think one of the things that I heard in that too that you started out with, and particularly with 39 years in the NBA, different supervisors, different mechanics, different rules. Being, in your position and going through those changes and, being a leader, being more experienced, how did you approach those changes? And, was there pushback, or, was that the new way of doing things? And now that's how you had to adjust.
It's a great question. You do have to adjust. Unfortunately, sometimes when new bosses come in, or you guys work for new supervisors and things like that, people want to reinvent this. And in a lot of cases, it's very unnecessary. There are basics, and of course, you have to do what your supervisor tells you to do, of course, and what your boss says. Well, I think in my career, my 39 years, I think I probably had 6 bosses, and maybe 7. Some of them I would rather have not have had. In most cases, what happens is that people try to have a legacy instead of what's good for the game. So, for example, I was lucky enough, Daryl Garrettson, who formulated the 3-person system, on a pro level, I was lucky enough to be with him when he did it. We did it a couple times in, I want to say it was Cleveland, Ohio. There was a camp and we did it. Daryl didn't let me do much. I was a young ref, but he knew that I was a referee degenerate who loved it. And Daryl didn't like anybody really to talk too much other than him. So he did an awesome job of putting that together. And then as this evolved, and we had the mechanics tape, which was done, as good as it could be that many years ago. We're talking 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It evolved and the game changed. And we were doing stuff in my last 10 years, or maybe even longer, 15 years maybe, on the court, we were getting away from fundamentals. And our refereeing really, really suffered. And the people that were doing it, were doing it, we knew it. So along came Mark Wunderlich, who's right under Monty McCutcheon. And Mark tweaked our mechanics and put a mechanics tape together, and we've been rolling ever since. We got back to basics, and everything's been fabulous. I mean, really, really good, because there's a discipline on the court, excuse me. And that's a major, major deal. It's a major deal. But we had to change to get back to your original question. Those types of things evolve when you're refereeing, and you got to be able to adapt on the fly. You got to be able to do it. So now we're in a situation where the last 4 years, I want to say it's 4 years that Mark put that tape together. You would probably know better than me, Matt. Usually the younger people know dates better than old fogies like me. But we've been really, really lucky that we've had some smart people to. We had a diagram. I wish I had it for you. That showed the game in 1970, 80, and where the shots were taken from. There's a basketball diagram, and it was mid-range dunks, maybe some threes. Now, now that this diagram showed right next to it was 2008-17 to 2020, and right around that three-point line, that's where the game is. It's all layups and all threes. That's the game. So what Mark Wunderlich was able to do was to tweak our mechanics to that. So we don't have people running as they're calling plays. They're stationary. So it has evolved. It has evolved. You, the referee, you have to evolve with it. It's pure and simple. Supervisor wants something. You got to do what the supervisor says. I'm not stupid. That's what you have to do. You have to evolve. But we're really, really lucky at the NBA level. There's 70 refs. G League, what is there, Matt? 70 refs there too, right? Yeah. So it's easy for us to be able to be uniformed or disciplined in our approach for our mechanics. Very easy.
For sure. And that's one of the things here with Nadine and Mike on this call here and being FIBA instructors is that FIBA has really centralized that education, and it's awesome. FIBA has their mechanics, their rules, no different than the NBA does.
Right.
So I think really those takeaways and those points are very good for us. Is that doing it the FIBA way, right, and getting back to the basics. And I kind of chuckled too because I remember refereeing in my first G League game and doing a FIBA signal, and it was an immediate knock that off, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's the same thing coming back, right? Is how you got to get to those fundamentals.
Exactly.
Next question here. When you sense that the game is getting away or getting ugly from the crew and the pressure's high, what strategies do you recommend to help the crew get back on track? Yeah. And I think this is more of a global, regardless of position on the crew, for you too.
It's a great question. I think a lot of times referees judge other referees. And when something happens, they have a tendency to say, well, it's his or her fault. Instead of, all right, now we got to get back on track here. All right. A lot of times I've walked up to refs during a timeout and say, hey, listen, we're losing this baby. We gotta, let's just take care of business here. Let's maybe just walk over to the coach, which I should have did a lot more than I did in my career. Walk over to that coach and say, hey, listen, you do us a favor here and help us out. So-and-so's been busting our chops, or you might have had two players that were very, going at one another, and take that approach. But there are certain things, and we, the Matt Kallios and the FIBA instructors and myself, can do to help those particular refs. We got to be able to instruct them in what works and what doesn't work. Back in the day when I first started reffing, it was totally different. You attacked people. You went after people. It doesn't work today. You have to find a way to get through that situation. Now, I'm not telling you you have to stand there and take crap after crap after crap after crap. And I'm not saying that. Certainly you have to draw a line at certain times. But referees can be their own worst enemies. But again, we got to do a better job of being able to teach the people and equip them with the tools to get out of those situations. Help them. Some nights you can't. It's inevitable that something's going to happen. But one of the things that I learned, and it took me a long time, was to do it, is to stay as calm as you possibly can. If there is a tool for a referee, they get one thing out of this whole thing tonight, to be as calm, cool, and collected as you possibly can for all those minutes. And that usually can get you over the hump. And then when you're using your mouth and you're talking to a coach and a player, always use your rule book. You know, a lot of times referees think that they want to dazzle coaches and players with dialogue. I know this happens in the game. Yeah, this always happens. Referees get themselves in trouble. Just coach or player asks you something, just go what's in the rule book or we call it our case book, in your whatever you call it, your manual or whatever. But never go off kilter and improvise. That's the worst thing you could do, because what's going to happen is that your supervisors are always going to get the phone call, and they're going to say, "Do you want to know what Matt Kallio said to me?" And then the guy will say, and they'll go, he shouldn't do that. But if you stay by the rule book and you answer questions, you usually can stop things from escalating in a basketball game. But it's a process.
Yeah, absolutely.
God knows it's a process. It's a great
For
question.
sure.
Great question. Whoever said that, awesome question.
We have some really good ones coming in here. This question here, so the mantra, game, crew, self, that we use.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you do personally as a referee to bring out the best in your crew, and what was your biggest strength as a partner?
Well, I wanted my partners to, when you know how you get your assignments and you go, you look at it, and then on the assignment it'll have the person's name, and you'll go like this. You know? I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be the guy that my partners got and said, "Oh, I like being with Joe." And I think that's a major deal. We talk about this a lot now, Matt, especially at the NBA level, right? Where you're trying to make the next guy better. So if I'm the crew chief and I'm a finals ref, that young kid that I'm working with, or those two people, my referee and the umpire, their job should be to try to get me back to the finals. My job as the crew chief is to get these guys, if they're not in the playoffs, to get them to the playoffs, and to make that crew better. If you stop worrying about your next assignment and this coach and this player liking you, and you worry about making your partners better, you'll be a very, very good referee. Because a lot of times as referees, we get into that selfish mood, you know. I got to get this next game. Ooh, I got to get to the playoffs. I got to get to the next round. Ooh, I want to be the crew chief. Just make your partners better. Don't judge your partners. That's a huge plays that are happening in games, and you'll go, "Oh wow, I wouldn't have called that," or "Ooh, what did she call that for?" Versus, where do I go here? Okay, I got to get to the next play. Ooh, I should be outside in here. I should be sideline attached, or I should be free throw line extended. Those are the types of things. Questioning your partners or judging your partners as the game is going on does nothing for what we just talked about.
That's great, Joey. This one here, we fall short sometimes of a goal or make a mistake in a game that affects the outcome. So I'll just read it for what it is. So it affects the outcome. So can you relate to a time in your officiating experience where you felt that you fell short or made a mistake, and how did you learn from that and rebound from it?
Yeah. Steve Javi probably says it best. Steve was, one of our greatest officials ever in our league and does a lot of TV work now. You learn by your mistakes. At our level, the problem is it's such a high level that making mistakes, is you're going to make them, but you don't want to make them at the end of the games, whatever. It's going to influence a game. I used to walk into there was I tell this story. I was on a streak. It was early in my career, and I was in my third year. I'll never forget it. And I was working with Bob Rakel from Cincinnati. God bless his soul. And every game we were having technical fouls and ejections. I mean, it was incredible. And I kept, I was one of those guys that was a thinker. I'd go back to the room, and I just didn't like the way everything was going, So I could talk to Bob, but Bob was one of those guys. He was an old school guy, and just throw them out. That was just throw them out. But we were influencing games, in my opinion. I get it, throwing them out, or I get that, but I kept saying to myself, we're influencing games. So I'll never forget it. We get to Chicago, and Golden State is playing Chicago. And Al Attles was Golden State's coach. And Al was probably as good a guy on the sidelines with referees that in the history of the game. Just as probably just a wonderful man. I've met him and talked to him numerous times after he left because he was working for Golden State. Well, I wind up throwing him out in, I don't know what it was, the third quarter or something. And I'm beside myself. As the game is getting over, I'm beside myself. Because now I'm questioning myself. Because I just threw out Al Attles. Nice guy. Very, very rarely. There's an old adage in officiating, Al was a good guy. Never make a good guy a bad guy. And I made Al a bad guy. I hit him with 2 tacks and eject him, and I influenced the game. And I got into the locker room, and I was one of those guys that just ran into the shower. I just sat in a chair with my head down, my 2 hands on my head. I had hair back then. So I was just beside myself. Bob Rakel looked at me and he says, Joe, what's the matter? I said, Bob, I just threw out Al Attles. He doesn't get technical fouls ever. And I just threw him out. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. So you question yourself, Matt. Instead of me blaming Bob Rakel, I now have to look in the mirror. And it's the same thing with calls. It's the same thing. Referees have a tendency to say, well, this coach is this player's this team's bad, this athletic director's a pain in the tush, instead of reflecting yourself. Because you have to look at yourself. Am I putting enough time in? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do to get better as a ref? Am I listening to my FIBA instructors? Do I call Matt Kallio when I have a problem? Do I call somebody that's my mentor? You have to be able, you'll get back what you give in, but you're going to make mistakes. Of course you're going to make mistakes. But when you do, seek somebody out. Hey, did I handle this correctly? Did I do this right? And you will get better, because there are a lot of people I have found in the officiating world, that are really, really good at instructing. Just because Joe Crawford was in the finals and all that stuff doesn't make me a good instructor. That doesn't make me a good instructor just because I made this certain level. I listen to a guy like Mark Wunderlich, and I learn. I listen to Monty, and I learn. Some people are just good instructors, and that's what you have to do. You have to be able to, pick and choose on some of the stuff that I may be saying may not be getting across to Matt Kallio. But you have to reach out as a young ref. Reach out. There are people out there that want to help you. They want to reach out. You have a situation. Hey Matt, did I handle this right? Hey Nadine, did I handle this right? And they will help.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's great, and getting back to yourself, right? Because you can always control what you're doing, right?
That's
And asking those questions.
Very good, Matt. Very good. You can only control what you do. Worrying about somebody else getting a playoff game, or this guy's, I used to hear it all the time, politician, he knows this guy does this. Shut up. Just go ref. Shut up. Nobody wants to hear it. Just go ref the game. If you're good, you're gonna get the games.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a tough year in a lot of respects, right?
Yeah.
And but I think that's something that's really important that I've learned in my short time, though, in officiating, is the history of the game and the people that you're around, and where you do start. You're with those same people throughout, even if you end up moving. Eventually, you reconnect at some point.
Yeah.
So I think it's really valuable to know the history of your leagues and the people you're around.
You're so the NBA is we're so fortunate. It's a family. It really is. I mean, you could have a beef with a coach or a player, and I've been lucky because now in this position I get to a lot of arenas and I see a lot of former players and I see a lot of former coaches. Everybody hugs and everybody says, "Remember the time that I called you this? Remember the time?" and that's the wonderful thing about it. It's I tell the story all the time about Hubie Brown. Hubie's one of our big time broadcasters. So Hubie was very, very difficult as a coach. Oy, oy, oy. He was hard, and he was hard on younger guys. And I was a younger ref, and we were in Cleveland. I'll never forget it. We had an older gentleman that took care of our locker room. He was the security guy. And Hubie was brutal. I think he was coaching Atlanta at the time. So we're going into the halftime, and we're walking to our locker rooms. We got the security guy, taking us in, and Hubie is just killing me. He's annihilating me. And I went like this, "Hey, Hube, stay in the dressing room. You're done. You're done for the night. Do you hear me? Done." So I walk into the room, and the poor guy that's the security guy, we closed the door. The security guy's knocking on the door. And he's going, "Joe, Joe." So, "What do you want, Pete?" I wouldn't open the door. He goes, "Hubie's out here. He wants to fight you." Because Hubie could have killed me. You know what I mean? I'm really a coward without this whistle. So I went like this. I said, "Tell Hubie I'm not going to come in out." So through the years, and I see Hubie, and every time I see him, I bring up that story. We both laugh about it. But it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I want to be respectful of your time here, Joey. So maybe just a couple more, and then whenever you need to hop off, you let me know too. So, kind of blending it into something you started to talk about, just being a younger official or a more experienced official. Putting those both together, being back into more your rookie years in the NBA, what is something that you should have done better as a young referee to help the crew? And then on the flip side, when now you're the crew chief in NBA finals, what's something that you reflect on that you could have done differently and should have been better at to help the crew on the reverse order?
That's a fabulous question. It's fabulous. I think early in my career, to be very honest with you, I was selfish. And I was a kid. I was 25 when I got the NBA. The two-person system, and I think I could have been a better partner. I was trying so desperately to get the approval of, we called it a lead referee back then. We didn't call it crew chief. He was the lead, and I wanted that person to accept me. So I would do things like that wasn't good for the game. I'd hit somebody with a quick tee, or throw somebody out real quickly because that guy, he'll think I have guts. You know what I mean? And when I look back on that, which is a fabulous question, I've never, nobody, and I've done a lot of these, it's never asked that question. It's fabulous. I think I was selfish. And my mentor was a guy by the name of Joe Gushu. And I used to call him all the time. That's why I said to you about calling people or emailing, whatever now. I would call him weekly. And I'd tell him. And I thought I was impressing him. I had this ejection or that. And he'd tell me, he said, Joey, let me tell you something. That isn't what the NBA refereeing or any type of refereeing is about. He just flat out told me right to my face, He hit me with a sledgehammer. And I think it was like in my third year, fourth year, and he was just one of those guys that, and I look back on that, and I really think that I was selfishly motivated. I, again, was trying to get that first playoff game. You know what I mean? I want to get there, And now you're taking away from the game, and you said it before, the game, crew, me. And I think what I was doing was actually putting myself ahead of the game. And then as I evolved as a ref and became a crew chief with the advent of the three-person system, I got better at trying to protect or help my partners versus hinder my partners. And I think early in my career, I hindered versus helped. And but that was that was a great question, Matt. I'm very glad you got me out and it got me to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have time for one last one here?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep this more general, but there's been a few kind of coming in, and it really just goes on the theme of what we've decided to call this: build your foundation. But if you had kind of like a closing thought or a recommendation for all the referees on this call, of what is, in your opinion, the biggest takeaways or the things to focus on to help them improve their game currently at this moment?
I would, if I was a young ref today, with the way people are quitting officiating and walking away from officiating because of the badgering, the bullying, I would not be so hard on yourself. Just because somebody is bullying and badgering you during a game, you should not quit because of that. If there's work issues or something like that, I get it. But don't walk away from this, because too many good young referees are walking away from this because they can't take the criticism. I tried to tell people, I don't know what the money is today when people are doing games. I would forfeit the game. That's what I used to do. I used to just forfeit the game and walk out of the gym. Now I see it because I'm at a lot of games. I'm still involved with basketball on a younger kids playing, and I go to a lot of games, and I see referees where a coach is just or a player is insane. And instead of them just throwing the person out or throwing the fan out, then everybody comes and they want to kill the guy. Walk out of the gym, but don't quit refereeing. If I was going to take it, if you like it, I would. That's what I would take away, because I see so many people that come up to me and say, "Yeah, I refed for like 4 years and I walked away." I said, "What?" I couldn't take the crap. And I said, "Were you any good at it?" And they said, "Yeah, I really liked it." I said, "Don't do that. You should have never did that."
Mhm.
I think that's it. The obvious thing is to say about the plays and mechanics and all that stuff.
Mhm.
I wouldn't quit. I think it's 70%. NASA, I'm involved with, I get some stats off of Referee Magazine. I think I read it there. 70% of the people that pass their tests in every sport quit in the first 3 years. And that's why we're in the predicament that we're in. Everybody needs refs.
Mhm.
But my takeaway is just don't quit. Call the Matt Kallios up, your FIBA instructors. If you have a question, the older guys or women, please give back. Just give back when you're at a game. Talk about a situation. Give back. Try to help that younger referee. Make them feel welcomed, that they're part of this. And I think sometimes we don't do a good job at that, Matt, either. But there's a couple things. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. Um, I I think this is tremendous, and we really thank you for your time and
Thank you, Matt.
your experience and expertise.
I hope I helped. Thank you very much for having me. I really, and anytime, just anytime you want me to come on, just let me know.
For sure.
I'd
No,
love to do it.
I think this is a great start for us and all the referees here in Canada, and lots of takeaways. And I think just putting together some things to just kind of encapsulate, the foundation piece and the takeaways, that we heard here is, get back to the basics, mechanics. Our rule book will help us.
There you go.
And the more we know that, the more confident we are. So that's what helped you with your communication with players and coaches.
Yeah.
It gave you a very successful 39-year career, which has continued. And that's my biggest thing. And I introduced you to the love of the game.
Thank
And
you.
that's the exciting piece, is that I was so excited for 2 weeks. I was like, we have to wait 2 weeks to do this with Joey? Like, we need that much time to get people excited for this?
I wish the people in my house were that excited.
Hey, well, I did notice we had a guest there. It seemed like your dog was helping you out with that squeaky toy for a bit, right?
We got the dog 8 months ago, and I'm not a very good disciplinarian with dogs. I love dogs. She bullies me.
Yeah. No, it's perfect.
I wish everybody good luck. Thank you very, very much for having me. I really enjoyed it, Matt. And good luck to everybody.
Sure.
Matt, I hope to see you sometime. I don't know what's happening with the summer, but I hope.
Who knows? But it's always a pleasure, Joey. So stay well, and best to you and the family.
Take care, everybody. Good seeing you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All righty. So just very briefly here, and I'm doing this no justice or service, and no different than my introduction of Joey. But we could have went through a resume for a very long time for Joey, and that includes both of our Canadian FIBA instructors, former FIBA referees. But first, Nadine Crowley, and many of you know her. Ottawa, correct, Nadine?
Correct.
All right,
Yes.
perfect. And she's currently a FIBA referee instructor and commissioner. And I just put this highlight here and worked at the Women's World Cup in 2006 in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I received both of their bios over email, and about 30 minutes later, reading both of them, I was like, all right, I'll just pick 2 points. And I got lazy because they do have the same title here. So we got Mike Thomson. And Mike, are you in Vancouver, or I don't actually know?
Yeah, I live in New Westminster, so a suburb of Vancouver.
Okay. Yeah, so also a FIBA referee instructor, commissioner, worked the Olympics 2000 in Sydney, but both of them very active in our development of referees here in Canada. So we have our fireside chat. So I'm going to just kind of go over to the feature here, and feel free to just keep sending those things in here. So I guess we'll get started here just as they're kind of floating in here, and I can get a little bit of routine, Mike and Nadine. But if you both could kind of just summarize some of your takeaways. It's great to have Joey with his NBA experience, and when you're part of that NBA, or really just any type of officiating at one level with one entity, right? You get so encapsulated in that you don't necessarily know what FIBA is, or how the FIBA process works and things like that. So what are some of your takeaways from the fundamentals, or some of the kind of transition between what you heard from Joey and the takeaways for our referees?
Mike, do you mind if I?
Oh, you go. You
I go
right ahead. You're 3 hours ahead of me, so I got time to think.
Okay, good. Thanks, Matt. I always find it, always find it helpful. I learned so much, and basic fundamentals are basic fundamentals, and it's always refreshing, but interesting to hear that no matter what level you're working, it always comes back to mastering those basic fundamentals. And what Joey talked about that really resonated with me, because that's something that we talk about at the FIBA level, is that self-talk. Self-talk is so important, and so many people, even at the highest level in FIBA, have never done it before, and had a really difficult time understanding what that's all about. And I think that's so important, because when you're reffing a game, it's play by play by play. And in order to get yourself to the next one, you have to be talking to yourself to recognize what's happening in this one. And I thought that was really important, and I was really happy that he mentioned that, because that self-talk goes into your mechanics. You're talking to yourself about, where am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be looking like? So that's really important. Establishing good habits. And to me, I was a player, so bringing a lot of my playing skills to referee really helped. And that is, as a player, it's all about basic fundamentals. And so that translates into officiating. I think with respect to building your own game and building upon your fundamentals, I find at the FIBA level, one of the things that we really focus on is crew communication. That at every tournament you go to, we have at least 2 sessions on how to communicate on the court, how to talk about a situation on the court. And I think communication skills is a huge part of the fundamentals that people need to really, really work on. And it's not just how to talk to people and talk to your crew, talk to the coaches, talk to players. But also, it's about bringing some of your own personality to the game. And I know from watching Joey for years, he brought his personality to the game, and that was a great part of him, because you felt as though you knew him and you felt comfortable with him, because he allowed himself to be vulnerable and to bring some of his personality to the game. So I think for me, those are some of the things. Also, that I think we have to keep in mind, game, crew, me.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that, before every game, I think officials should be looking at and thinking about, what do I need to do to make my crew better and to not influence the game in a negative way. And I want to say that, at our U Sport Nationals this last month in March, um, I think that's really shining through in Canada. The 12 officials that I had at the Nationals, that was their motto. It was about game first, how do we protect each other as a crew, and then me was far down the ladder. So I think that's really resonating across Canada, and I think that's really helped our game a lot. So those are some of the things. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, how about yourself? Kind of extracting away now that you had that 3-hour time change to think on it.
So I'm actually going to echo two of the points Nadine made and try and put a couple things in between. I think one of the big things that Joey said and what Nadine was finishing with was make your partner better. And I truly think if we could have a mindset shift with our officials in Canada, and this clearly is not everyone, but if we could get everybody thinking when they go on the floor, how do I make my partner better? And if you can successfully make your partner better, you absolutely make your crew better, you make yourself better, and in fact, you make all 5,000 officials in the country better. A lot of what Joey was talking about at the end with losing officials, with us not retaining new officials, is because I think a lot of the times when those officials get out on the floor, their partners are not supporting them in a way that helps them to be successful. And I think that's a big piece that if we could focus on making our partners better, that's huge. Joey also made a comment about the end of the game and the focus that comes on the end of the game. And, when I started to referee, good news, there were televisions, but there were certainly not any ability to videotape anything, at least not on on a small scale basis. And right now, when we go out and referee, there are people in the stands with phones that are videotaping things. Somebody else with an iPad. Every game that we work, there's somebody with a recorder recording all of it. And so there's becomes this huge focus on how we represent ourselves. And two pieces about how we represent ourselves. One is Joey talked about the end of the game, and in FIBA, we're referring to that as the last 2 minutes. And we want to do everything we can to eliminate a mistake in the last 2 minutes. We're not encouraging mistake in the first 2 minutes, but if we have an out of bounds play in the first 2 minutes, realistically, nobody's going to remember it. It's not going to be a big deal at the end of the game. But the last 2 minutes has complete focus. And you don't want to find yourself as the lead story. If we have to get back to playing again, you don't want to find yourself as the lead story on the 11 o'clock news because of something you've done the last 2 minutes. So we need to turn our focus up and be big at that point. The other thing that Nadine talked about, and I'll describe it in a slightly different way, which is what I so much appreciated with Joey, is that he took time to show everybody how human he was. And he demonstrated a real human honesty with a couple of his stories and admitting where he had struggles whether as a young official or at the end of his career, or being able to think back about how he could have done things differently. And that's the other big change I think we have to make with all of our officials is be human. Make sure people see you on the floor as a human being and not a uniform. So often the referees are just seen as a uniform. That uniform has a real negative to it. In fact, the whistle is an irritant and has a huge negative. So let's be more human. Let's talk to people. Let's make sure we engage with people. You don't have to be friends with people, but you can build a small relationship with a player or a coach or anybody by just acting in a real human way on the floor. And sometimes that means you need to be vulnerable on the floor and accept that you're not perfect. We all know when we make mistakes, but it is life. It is a game full of mistakes. Those were sort of the things that I wanted to echo what Nadine was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are very good points. And going to that human element, just kind of bring that into context too, is, if you really listened and, saw Joey's emotion, right? And just you even saw some of those irritants, some of those things that really are his pet peeves, as now as a referee advisor. So his role is no different than kind of a FIBA instructor. Just put that in the grand scheme for the NBA. So that's the beautiful thing, and that authenticity that he offers to the game is just it's humbling, and something that I really take away from it is I want to be like that. I want to make sure that when I talk the game of basketball, I don't care if it's with my family or if it's my friends or my referee peers. That love for the game should shine through. So I think that was very unique, and ultimately too why he's a name that popped up for something to try out for us during these times. So the question here, and this is a very, very good question. So we've been talking about make your partner better, right? And game crew self. And I love this question, but so in the regards to making your partner better, what does that actually look like, or what does that sound like in the locker room or during the game itself? What are some things, or the actual, how do you do that to make your partner better? And Nadine, maybe if you want to go first, and then we can.
Sure. What does it look like? Well, it's support. It's not blowing. If you're the crew chief, and you've got younger partners, not blowing in their areas, allowing them to master their primaries, allowing them to deal with players, coaches, and not having to come in and rescue, but supporting. And you can support from across the court with a smile, making eye contact. You walk by each other when you're changing positions, and just good call partner. But I think it starts before the game, for me, anyways. It starts as soon as you get that assignment, and you know who you're working with, and reaching out. And you're a crew, and on a crew, okay, they delineate who's going to be the crew chief and who's going to be what, but everybody's equal. And I think what's important is everybody has a say, and that your partners feel heard, and they feel like they're contributing to the crew even before the game starts. So it looks like equality. It looks like an equal say, and that their say is respected and their contributions are acknowledged. So that's what it could look like in the change room and on the court. I'll leave some for Mike to finish off there.
Yeah, sure, Mike.
A couple things, and I'll approach it a little bit from the perspective of being the crew chief on a game, and I think you need to bring energy and you need to bring passion. And I think what you described a minute ago with Matt, with Joey, was really what we saw out of Joey was passion. And if you can bring that passion and get your partners to um, I really hate the term buy in, but buy into that passion and accept it, you can bring them along. But I think you have to make sure you involve people. But as the person that's taken that leadership role, take responsibility. It includes protecting a young official or somebody that's having a struggle. And we all have struggles on the court. I mean, none of us do this with the exception of one or two people on the call. None of us do this professionally. We have other lives, whether it is work, what we're facing in society right now, whether it's a family issue or something that's happened. Everybody has lots of things going on, and we just don't always know why somebody isn't as focused as you want them to be or as present as you want them to be.
Mhm.
As a leader, be willing to fall on your sword and take responsibility when problems happen on the floor, and deal with your own messes, deal with your own problems, take care of that stuff. But make sure everybody feels part of that team. So when you have success, you're sharing that success.
For sure. Absolutely. So something, that's, again, this kind of ties in some of the quotes from what Joey was saying, and being around him in the locker room and hearing him speak with post games and this whole partnering thing. But also too, I'd challenge us to think about why we do certain things. So, he made a reference that it's not your game. But sometimes we come in as the more experienced person, you're like, oh, I got to take care of so and so because they're a rookie, or they have less experience, or I think I'm better than them, right? So, and going back to Nadine saying, blowing out a primary. Well, it's not just blowing out a primary. What happens when we blow our whistle on plays out of primary? We say to our partners that my judgment is better than yours or quicker than yours. And now it either gets that partner to not blow their whistle or start blowing their whistle on stuff that isn't in their primary. And now you're putting crap in the game. So, that's, we probably saved everybody from a 2-hour session
Yeah.
with Joey, because again, those are the pet peeves about why do we do it? And, and if we can be honest with ourselves and that's something I try to reflect on, and I've been there, and it's through the growth, and we always grow from it. You look at it like, oh, damn, like that was my fault. I was being bad because I was being selfish because I thought I was better in that moment. And I actually made the game worse because of that decision. So I think that's a unique approach to it. A question here, and I'm going to kind of reframe it so we get two parts out of it. But transitioning from, being a referee and, currently too in Canada, you can be a referee and maybe an instructor and educator in your same area at the same time. But that switch from becoming a referee to a referee instructor, what are some of like the biggest things that you've learned about giving back, or how you deliver the feedback? What are some things that you're cognizant of that you think would help improve referees from like the referee instructor standpoint, that hat that you wear now, from making that transition?
You could go, Mike. I've taken the first two.
So I think one of the really big pieces is really recognizing that it's about continuous improvement, and that the focus from a referee instructor piece is to help the officials figure out on their own
Mhm.
where they need to make the changes to improve and grow. There's no point me as an official or as a referee instructor ever telling someone what I think they're doing wrong. That's not going to help, and it's not going to have anybody make a change. It's about offering alternatives and getting them to think about, is there a different way to do something? Could they have taken a different approach to a particular play? Also, um, the three of us had a little conversation last night, and it's always about the why. So if we have a problem in a game or a problem on a play, it's about the why, because we can also often sit down and look at the video and very quickly conclude that there was a different way to handle the play, but we need to back up and ask ourselves, why did we make the decision we did at the time? Very often it's positioning, but sometimes it can be because we kicked a call at the other end 30 seconds earlier and it's still in our mind and we can't bring ourselves back and focus. So it's always trying to identify those whys, and have people understand those type of things. I think from an instructing point of view, your biggest tool is a question. The telling doesn't work. It's about asking questions and have people think through those questions, and also have people understand why you're asking the questions. What is it you're trying to get to? And I'm kind of chuckling sometimes in my head, because as a referee instructor, you'll sometimes ask an official a question, and you immediately get an answer that's based on the first two words of the question. So the response actually has nothing to do with the question you're asking, and it gives you some really immediate answers as to maybe why we're actually discussing this play, because we so often jump to conclusions or decide something's going down a particular road, and we get there very quickly. I think that's one of the really big transitions to the referee instructor part. The other piece of it is, as a referee instructor, my job is not to convince anybody that I know anything, or convince anybody to know more than they do, or convince anybody that I could have done it differently. It's about those individuals that are on the floor and trying to provide them with the tools to work their way through within the fundamentals. We always come back, and I'll try and stop, Nadine, so there's something left, but we always try and talk about the IoT, the individual officiating techniques, tie it back to that, make sure it gets back to the fundamentals that this whole evening started with, so that we can focus on getting those better. My last comment will be, the crazy thing about officiating is we seldom practice it. I mean, the teams, maybe not at the professional level, but a university team will probably have 5 practices, maybe 6 practices for every game they play. Well, how many practices do we get as referees before we actually go and referee? So it's the other piece of the instructor role, is trying to convince people you have to practice this. You have to go through drills. You have to do things repetitively to make sure that you can get it right.
Mhm.
Do you have anything to
Yeah.
add, or did you want me to move to another question?
I just a couple things. Mike was very thorough, but just a couple things. Mike is so right that we don't have the answers, and that's not our role. A referee instructor should be a coach, a facilitator. But one thing to keep in mind, because referee instructors were older usually, and been usually refereeing 30 plus years, and back in the day, 30 years ago or 20 years ago, there was a different style, right? Your instructor would come in, throw the clipboard, gesticulate, and the delivery is so important. You've got your 2 or 3 officials who just left everything on the court for 40 minutes. When they come into the change room, and they're respectful enough to sit and listen to or engage in a conversation about the game, make sure that your delivery is human, that you treat these officials the way you want to be treated, with respect, you know that you listen to what they have to say, and help them to understand some of the struggles or even positive things that happen during the game. So delivery is really important. And, again, just like refereeing, be human, be respectful. And the other thing in the delivery, it's not your job to review the entire game, going through play by play by play by play. That's not what it's about. It's, what Mike talked about. Choose some themes, and those themes are the IoTs. And that's what you focus on. If you've got clips, don't be showing 20 clips. 3, 4, 5 clips, maybe max. But those clips should be tied to the themes that you want your crew to walk away thinking about. Mm-hmm. And those are usually mechanics, IoT stuff. So just about delivery. So that's something I really learned and have fine-tuned over the years.
For sure. So next question here. Joey talked about maintaining concentration and getting your focus back. So after a missed call with no whistle or having another official call in your primary, whatever that is, what are some ways that you recommend getting your focus back for referees? What are some tools from your experience as a referee on the floor, or even from your training that you'd recommend to help a referee get back to refereeing the next play?
For me, it's about self-talk. Acknowledging, I may have kicked that, but I need to, I need to stay in it. And so it's about talking to yourself about, all right, what's the next play? What's the next play? Mm-hmm. Put that on the shelf so that I can review that later or talk about that, if I need to in the timeout or at halftime. But utilizing self-talk to be able to get myself in. Also, going back to basics. About, what's the time? What are the fouls? Getting back into it. What are the fouls? Where are my partners? What's going on out here on the court? So getting yourself back into that focused mentality, that focused position.
Yeah.
Mike?
So for me, it's that we have to make sure we don't overvalue the play or the situation and think it's more than it is. So I'm going to hesitate to guess that of the 350 people that are on the line at the moment, we'd actually all like the opportunity to go out on the floor and actually kick a play. I mean, we don't have that opportunity right now. That's been taken away from us in the situation we're in. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to take something like this situation and recognize that making a mistake on a play on a basketball game that we referee on the average basis, you know what? It's not about it. It's not a decision that has an impact on somebody's life. And the language I always use is nobody's Christmas has ever been ruined by a play in a game in February. That doesn't mean we don't want to be right. We don't want to get it right. We don't want to learn from it. We want to improve. But I think sometimes we actually take ourselves too seriously. And if you think about the conditions we often work in, where you go to a high school gym and, well, you're lucky if you can actually get scorekeepers to be there, or you're lucky if you can actually get a ball that's playable before the game, or get a dressing room or whatever. Sometimes we have to recognize that if the people that we're working the game for aren't willing to put those conditions together that make it right, there's no point us overvaluing a mistake on the floor.
Mm.
I can guarantee everybody that's on this call makes far fewer mistakes than the players and the coaches that are in that game. Don't overvalue the problem. Just get back to what you're doing, get the next play right.
Mhm.
That's very, very good perspective and very good points by both of you. And I think just one thing I would add to that too is for everybody on this is there's no right answer, because you could talk self-talk, you could talk about this is what I do, but that's not going to work for everybody. So it's really getting back to the self-reflection of how you felt, the how, the why. Really, it was probably the best advice that I got when I heard that. And I heard this. This isn't just NBA training and having that opportunity. I heard this in a fever room. When you take the time to self-reflect and you put that context and how did I feel during that play? Like, was the crowd coming down on me? Was the coach animated? We put all those factors together. That'll help you get to that rationale or that answer of how you get to that next play. So, there's lots of great questions coming through. I just did want to say that one very common one that keeps coming up, and I'm not ignoring it here, but and all of these questions we will get an answer in some form as a follow up here. But as for like resources and podcasts and books and all those other things, that is something we can distribute to you after the call, just as like a resource library. CBOC's been doing great work in their document section and with the game plan kind of back end with some of their education resources. And then further, we can elaborate on that list. So for another question here, and this is from a younger official. What advice would you give, and by young, let's say less experienced, because people start at different ages, but what advice would you give for a less experienced official when they struggle to be a leader?
Maybe I can tell you what exactly comes to my mind, Matt. I would actually encourage them to have a little bit of patience and recognize that everybody develops at their own pace, and we have different type of learners. We have learners that can be in a classroom and hear something and know how to put it into work immediately, or how to use it immediately. We have other people that learn by actually going out and doing it. And I think if you feel you're having those type of struggles, you need to give yourself a little bit of a break and really recognize that if it's something that you do care about and getting better at, there will be a day that it will just click on. Just think about the things you've been told and the things that you've been that have been, the tools have been given to you to help, but don't force it. I think somebody who's struggling to lead, certainly not everybody, but I worry about somebody trying to force that. It'll happen when you're ready, and you just need to have enough experiences, enough reps, enough repetition to be able to do that.
Mhm.
I guess for me, uh, there's more to that question because that's a big question. Because leadership leadership is a big concept, right? And there's so many different facets to being a leader. And I think people try to, like Mike said, don't rush it, but people try to do it all at once. Just pick a facet of leadership, you know, whether because you don't have to be the one doing everything and then running everything and pulling people together. Maybe you lead just by example, of mastering the rules. You know, you always need someone on the crew that knows the rules because oftentimes usually the veterans don't know them that well. Or, you know, just leading by implementing the new mechanics, because, you know, a lot of officials don't like to change and adapt. So there's different facets of leadership. And I think that if you choose one facet and master that, and continue to work at that, then I think you'll be fine. But don't try to do it all. And as a younger official, I think you have to learn what those facets of leadership are and what you're comfortable with.
For sure. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, Matt, I was just going to interrupt because I'm not sure what your plan is here for the rest of the evening, and you started to talk about some CBOC resources, and I wanted to give a shout out to a couple of people. I've noted that Rike, who is our CBOC coordinator of officials development, has been on the call all night long, and Rike is doing so much for us to help with the communications, reach out. I think it's really cool that Rike is on the call tonight, because she hasn't been an official, but I think we'll work to convert her to do so through these type of things. Really appreciate Rika being here, and it's been really so neat to see a number of other people on the call. There's a fellow, Andrew Salorme, from Ottawa, who's on the call, who was one of our drivers. He was one of our drivers at the youth sports tournament this year, and all of those folks did such a fabulous job, and great to see. And I think for everybody else on the call, we really need to recognize that this was Maddie's brainchild tonight, and Matt's the one that's also. And I think we're going to try and reach out and do a little bit of a survey to get some feedback, get some guidance as to what we want to do in the future, and is this something we should, start doing on a more regular basis. I just want to make sure we got that in before we cut off for the night, Matt. So really want to thank you.
Yeah, for sure. No, the question, I do appreciate that, and thank you for your time and effort over the weeks and helping prepare and making this a success, right? So, the questions have kind of slowly tapered off. Some of them are overlaps between the sessions, so I think this would be a good time to just take a minute just to say thank you to everybody on this call. And that really does mean everybody. That means the 348 people that are still on here and not the people that are presenting. Stay hungry, stay curious, ask questions. During these times, I think it just allows you to reflect on how important the game means to you or to others, and have this community. So I think it's really special, and thank goodness for the MJ documentary, because I think I might have lost my mind. And I can kind of relate to everybody, and no different than Joey, who's like, oh, I'm doing several of these. Like, this is one of the most sought after speakers in the referee community, not just for basketball referees. And, all of us are just wanting to jump back at it and get back on the floor. So I think it's a beautiful thing. And it's, I think, a really good start for some of the future, as Mike spoke about, and Nadine, and working with Canada Basketball to really bring this together for our referees. So thank you to everybody for that. And Nadine, Mike, any closing thoughts?
I just want to thank all the referees for your generous contributions, and not just of your time tonight, but contributing to the food bank at this time. I think that kudos to everybody. That's just it's just, our referee families come together, and we come together to help other families. So thank you.
Just echo that thank you. I mean, looking at that map that's up on the screen, I mean, we got about 5,300 miles between the person that's as far east as they are on the call and the person that's west in most west in northern British Columbia. There's about 5,300 miles, and that's a pretty big span, and it's been really cool to see an awful lot of the names on the list. And so thank you for taking the time tonight. I don't think when we do this in the future, we'll use as much time. We'll be a little shorter and a little more succinct so that we're not dominating your time. But I think this is a great start to getting a conversation across the country going. So thank you.
Sure. So thank you, everybody. You can feel free to log off the call here now. And we wish everybody the best through these times, and best to you and your family, and health. Take care.